Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. I want you to take a second and mentally open up your work calendar. Just visualize this week. Do you see a nice, clean, open pasture of time where you can actually think? Or are you looking at a game of Tetris that you are currently losing? You know exactly what I mean. Block after block of blue rectangles, maybe 30 minutes of white space between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., which is, just enough time to grab a coffee, but definitely not enough time to actually do the work you're talking about in all those meetings.
That image is painfully familiar. It is the universal pain point of the modern professional. We usually label it meeting fatigue, but I honestly think that term is a little too soft. It doesn't really capture the severity of the issue. What we're really talking about is a structural failure in how we work. It's that sinking sensation that the process of work, the talking, the updating, the check-ins, is slowly suffocating the actual work itself.
Right. It's that anxiety that if you aren't on a call or if your little green dot isn't active on Slack, you aren't visible. You aren't working. And frankly, it's just exhausting. But we aren't here today just to complain about Zoom fatigue or, vent about our schedules. We are here to unpack a very specific solution. We're doing a deep dive into a fascinating article by Felix Römer from SmartKeys.org. It's titled Asynchronous Communication Tools, Reducing Dependency on Real-Time Meetings.
And this is a crucial read.
It is. And I want to be clear right up front. This isn't just a guide on how to send more emails. Because if the solution to meeting fatigue is just inbox fatigue, I'm out.
No, absolutely not. If you just swap a bad, unstructured meeting for a 300-word email chain that drags on for 3 days, you haven't solved the problem. You've just changed the format of the distraction. What Römer is arguing for here is a fundamental strategic shift. It's about moving from a culture of instant replies, which, keeps everyone in that reactive firefighting mode, to a culture of measured responses.
Measured responses. I really stuck on that phrase when I was reading the source material. It sounds so intentional. It implies you actually have time to think and process before you hit send, rather than just reacting to a ping.
Exactly. And that is the core mission of this deep dive. We're going to analyze the blueprint Römer provides in the text. We'll look at how using smart recorded updates and specific tooling strategies can reduce your dependency on real-time meetings. And here's the counterintuitive part that I love. The claim is that this actually increases your team's alignment and documentation, not, make everyone feel disconnected.
Which is the biggest fear, right? Managers hear fewer meetings and they just translate that to loss of control. They think the team is going to drift apart. So before we get to the tools, we have a great stack to cover. Let's tackle the why. The source material identifies a breakdown in the current synchronous model. Why is the old way of doing things failing us now?
It fundamentally comes down to the requirement of presence. Synchronous work demands that everyone be present simultaneously. Whether that's a Zoom call, a boardroom meeting, or even just a Slack discussion where you expect an answer in 30 seconds. It requires time overlap.
Which, in a globalized world, or even just a flexible hybrid team where people have different life schedules, is logistical nightmare.
It creates a bottleneck. It forces everyone to align their schedules to the lowest common denominator, usually that one time slot where nobody is eating, sleeping, or commuting. But Römer points out a deeper cost than just scheduling headaches. It kills deep work.
Okay, deep work. Explain that connection for us.
Well, think about it. If you have to break your concentration every 45 minutes to jump on a status call or reply to a ping because your culture demands instant availability, you never get into that flow state. That state is where the complex problem-solving happens. It takes time to ramp up into deep thought.
The article used a great analogy for this. It's like trying to get a full night's sleep but having an alarm clock go off every hour. You're technically in bed for 8 hours, but you never hit REM sleep. You're just napping through your career.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. You're physically there, but mentally fragmented. So the source proposes the async definition. This is a workflow where team members keep projects moving without waiting for that temporal overlap. It isn't just, I'll get to it later. It's a system where later is just as effective, if not more effective, than now.
And the urgency comes from the fact that spreadsheets and weekly status calls just don't provide visibility anymore, right? We've all been there. You rely on a live call to make a decision. Everyone nods, the call ends, and then what?
Then the decision evaporates into the ether. Unless someone is acting as a court stenographer, that context is lost. Modern professionals need transparent, searchable systems. Römer outlines a benefit triad that you gain when you make this shift correctly.
Let's break those down. I think this helps frame why this is worth the effort. What's the first pillar of the triad?
First is flexibility. This is the obvious one, but it's critical. Projects move forward regardless of time zones. You don't need to wait for the London team to wake up to get an approval if the approval process is built correctly in an async tool. The bottleneck of time is removed from the equation.
Okay, so that gives us speed and convenience. What's the second benefit?
Efficiency. This is about replacing those standard 30 to 60-minute calls with something faster. The source suggests short notes or videos. Think about it. How many times have you sat in a 1-hour meeting for an update that realistically was 5 minutes of content and 55 minutes of pleasantries waiting for people to join and tech troubleshooting?
Too many to count. It's this meeting could have been an email meme, but operationalized into a business strategy. And the third benefit.
This is the one I find most valuable strategically, documentation. By working asynchronously, you are automatically building a searchable record of decisions.
Because you have to write it down or record it to send it, so the paper trail is created by default. You don't have to remember to take minutes.
Exactly. In a verbal meeting, context is lost the moment it is spoken. In an async workflow, the communication is the documentation. Nothing falls through the cracks because the cracks are filled with searchable text and video. If you need to know why a decision was made 3 months ago, you don't have to rely on faulty memory. You just look at the thread.
That is a compelling argument. But let's get practical. This is a tech-focused deep dive, and we need to talk about the stack. The source material goes deep into the specific software required to pull this off. It warns that you can't just grab a bunch of apps. You have to choose categories intentionally.
Right. You need to map the tool to the workflow. The first category the article calls the game changer is video and screen recording. This feels like the biggest shift from the old school way of working.
The standout tool mentioned here is Claap. Now, I hadn't looked into Claap deeply before reading this article. How does it, differentiate itself from just recording a video on your phone and emailing it?
Well, Claap is designed specifically for this async discussion. It allows for short recording, sure, but it pairs them with automatic transcripts and AI summaries. But the killer feature the text mentions is in-video reactions.
Break that down. How does that work in practice?
It means you can watch a video update from a colleague, click on a specific moment on the timeline, say at the 2-minute mark where they show a specific chart or a line of code, and leave a comment right there, attached to that specific frame.
That is significantly better than sending an email afterward saying, hey, at minute 2.15 regarding the Q3 numbers.
Yeah.
It keeps the context attached to the content. It turns a monologue into a dialogue, just, not a live one.
Exactly. It makes the feedback contextual and immediate. And practically speaking, for those wondering about the cost, the source notes the free plan allows for 10 uploads, which is good for a trial, but the team plan is around $10 per user per month. So it's an investment. But when you compare $10 a month to the hourly cost of your team sitting in useless meetings, the ROI is pretty clear.
That's a great point. And then we have the more familiar names like Loom, right?
Yes, Loom is the classic for that quick screen plus camera recording. It's great for, I need to show you this bug, or here's how to navigate this new dashboard. It's basically instant clarity. But I also want to highlight Grain because it bridges the gap between the old world and the new.
How so?
Grain takes actual meetings, because let's be real, you will still have some live meetings, and turns them into searchable assets. It uses AI to generate highlights and summaries. So if you miss the meeting, or if you were double booked, you don't have to watch the whole hour. You can just search for your name or the topic you care about.
That is huge for the fear of missing out, anxiety we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
You can skip the meeting, but still get the data. You don't have to be in the room to know what happened in the room.
Precisely.
Okay, moving to the next category. Project management and visibility. The source leads with Jira. Now, Jira has a reputation. It can be a beast.
It can be intimidating, but for software delivery, it's the standard for a reason. Römer discusses its use for agile teams, specifically using Kanban or Scrum boards to reduce those daily check-ins. The logic is, if the board is up to date, you don't need a stand-up meeting to ask what everyone is doing. The board is the status update.
And for pricing context on that,
the source notes it's free for up to 10 users, which is great for startups or small teams. The premium plan sits at roughly $16 per user per month.
But what if you aren't building software? What if you're a marketing team or HR, operations? Jira might be overkill.
For non-software teams, the text suggests Trello and Hive. Trello is visual, card-based, very intuitive. It's great for linear processes. Hive is interesting because it's a bit more robust in its views. It offers Gantt charts, calendar views, and tables. So if you're a project manager who loves a Gantt chart, but your creative team prefers a simple list, Hive lets you toggle between them on the same data.
That flexibility is key because everyone processes information differently. If you force a creative thinker into a giant Excel spreadsheet, they might just shut down. Okay, let's talk about the third category, design and collaboration.
This is where the death by committee usually happens. In the old days, a design review meant getting 10 people in a room, projecting an image on a wall, and arguing about the shade of blue for 40 minutes.
Painful memories. I think we've all been in that room.
The source highlights Figma here. It allows for simultaneous edits and version history. You don't need a live review because you can see the changes happening in real time, or you can log in later and see the evolution. You leave comments directly on the design elements.
And for the brainstorming phase, before you even have a design.
Miro. It's essentially an infinite digital whiteboard. The article mentions it has templates and sticky notes. You can brainstorm without a gathering. Everyone just adds their sticky notes whenever they have the idea. It actually democratizes the brainstorming process. The loudest voice in the room doesn't win. The best sticky note does.
There was one more tool mentioned in this section, Assure. This seemed very specific.
Yes. Assure is for the approval phase. It's a proofing dashboard. It solves that specific problem where you have an email chain with 6 people saying approved, but one person is looking at version 2 and another is looking at version 3. Assure handles the sign-off on creative assets formally.
That sounds like it prevents a lot of... I thought we agreed on the other version disputes. So we have the strategy and we have the toolkit. But I want to pivot to the strategic value. Why does this actually matter for the business? Bottom line, the source mentions the 5-minute rule. I love a good rule of thumb.
It's from the implementation playbook section of the article. The rule is simple. If a status update can be read or watched in 5 minutes, post it instead of booking a meeting.
That sounds almost too simple, but the implication is massive.
It is. Think about the ripple effect. If you adhere to that rule, you're suddenly freeing up massive blocks of time. You aren't booking 30 minutes for a 5-minute update just because Outlook defaults to 30-minute slots. And this connects back to deep work. When you shift to this model, you get fewer interruptions. You get clearer written context. You aren't constantly context switching between doing and talking about doing.
But there's a governance angle here too, right? We touched on documentation, but the source uses the term auditability.
Yes, and this is where the expert in me gets excited about systems. The source emphasizes the searchable record. Tools like Bondle are mentioned specifically because they provide time-stamped audit histories.
Why is that so important for the average listener?
Well, imagine you're in a regulated industry, or you just have a tricky client dispute. The client says, "We never approved that change." In a meeting-based culture, unless someone wrote really good minutes, that approval is lost in the ether. It becomes he said, she said. In an async tool like Bondle, or even in central repositories like Slack or Notion, you can pull up the record. Here is the approval, time-stamped from your account on this date.
So it's not just about productivity, it's about protection. It's corporate insurance.
Precisely. It keeps everyone honest and accountable.
Now, I have to bring up one specific tool mentioned in the cultural impact section because it sounded a bit almost counter to the async philosophy, but interesting. Frameable spaces.
Yes. This addresses the loneliness factor. One of the downsides of remote or async work is you lose that sense of who is around. You can feel like you're working in a void. Frameable spaces mimics office presence. It lets you see who is in the building, so to speak, represented digitally.
So you can see if someone is at their desk without actually pinging them or interrupting them?
Right. It helps preserve that culture of being together and allows for spontaneous interactions if you want them without forcing a formal meeting schedule. It puts the human back in the system.
Okay, so we have the why, the what, and the tools. Now comes the hard part, the how. If a listener's thinking, this sounds great, but my team is addicted to meetings, if I stop showing up, they'll think I quit, how do they actually start? What does the playbook say?
The source is very practical here. It warns, do not try to change everything overnight. If you try to ban all meetings tomorrow, you will have a revolt. The suggestion is a 2-week pilot.
Walk us through what that looks like.
You shortlist 2 or 3 options. Maybe you try a Claap for updates and Trello for tasks, and you run it for 2 weeks with a specific team or a specific project. But, and this is critical standardization is key, you can't just tell people post updates. You need templates.
What goes into these templates?
The article suggests creating one-page templates for updates that must include 3 specific things: goal, owner, and due date.
Why those 3 specifically?
Because ambiguity is the enemy of async. If I post an update but I don't say who needs to do what by when, nothing happens, then people panic and schedule a meeting to clarify. If every update has goal, owner, and due date, you cut out that ambiguity loop.
And the other part of standardization mentioned was response windows. This seems vital for that anxiety management we talked about.
Absolutely. You need to set expectations. If I post an update in the Slack channel, I expect a response within 4 hours, or by end of day. If you don't define that, people will obsessively check for replies every 10 minutes, or conversely, they'll feel ignored and disengaged. You have to define the cadence so people can relax and do their work.
So you're building a social contract for how the team communicates. But how do we know if it's working? The source warns against just guessing or going by vibes.
Right. Measuring success. The article gives us 3 specific metrics to track to prove this is worth it. Number 1 is time saved.
How do you track that accurately?
Literally count the canceled meetings. Look at your calendar logs. If you canceled 3 one-hour recurring meetings and there are 5 people in each meeting, that's 15 hours of salary time saved per week. That's a hard number you can take to leadership.
Okay, that's the efficiency metric.
Yeah.
What is number 2?
Throughput. This is for the Jira users. Track your project cycle times. Are tickets moving across the board faster? If you aren't waiting for a Tuesday meeting to approve something that was done on Thursday, your throughput should go up. You're shaving days off the delivery time.
And the third metric?
Engagement. This is really interesting. Monitor search hits and monitor video views. If you record a strategy update on Loom or Claap, are people actually watching it? The analytics in these tools will tell you.
That's fascinating. In a real meeting, everyone nods, but you don't know if they're actually listening or just planning their lunch. With async, you can see, hey, I sent out this update and only 10% of the team watched it.
Exactly. It tells you immediately that something is wrong with your communication style or the content, not necessarily the tool. It makes internal communication data-driven for the first time.
So, zooming out to the big picture, what does this all mean for the future of our workplaces? Are we heading toward a world where we never speak to a human being again? Just sticky notes and video clips.
That is the fear, isn't it? But the conclusion of the source material is actually quite nuanced. The goal isn't to eliminate all human contact. That would be a disaster for morale and culture.
Thank goodness. I happen to like talking to people.
The goal is to reserve that live time for what it's actually good for. Complex debate, high-stakes problem-solving, and relationship building. You shouldn't be bonding over a status update. That is boring. You should be bonding over a coffee chat or a creative brainstorming session.
So it's about clearing the junk off the calendar so you can actually enjoy and utilize the time you do spend together.
Precisely. And this leads to a provocative thought that I would like the listeners to really sit with. It's about the difference between outcome and activity.
Break that down for us.
In a traditional office, activity is visible. It looks like being in meetings, nodding your head, replying instantly to emails. I'm busy, look at my calendar. But in this new world, that reclaimed time must translate into shipped work. The future of work is about measured responses rather than instant replies. It's a shift from performative busyness to tangible output. If you aren't in meetings, you need to be producing value.
That is a powerful distinction. Measured responses versus instant replies.
Yeah.
I think we could all use a little more measurement and a little less knee-jerk reaction in our lives.
I agree completely. It requires more discipline, but the payoff is a calmer, more effective work life.
So here's your final tip from the source material, and I love this because it's so actionable. If you do one thing after listening to this, do this. Start small this week.
Yes. Don't try to overhaul your whole company's culture by Monday. Just find one recurring meeting on your calendar, maybe that Monday morning status check-in that everyone dreads, and convert it into an async update. Use a template, record a quick video, and cancel the invite. Just see what happens.
I challenge everyone listening to do exactly that. Take one meeting off the books and see if the sky falls. I am willing to bet it won't.
I bet you'll just get an hour of your life back, and your team will thank you.
And on that note, we want to thank you for tuning in to the SmartKeys podcast. We hope this deep dive helps you reclaim your calendar and maybe even enjoy your work a little bit more.
Absolutely.
If you found this valuable, please subscribe to the podcast. We're constantly exploring the future of work, and you don't want to miss what we have coming up next.
And remember, we only scratched the surface of the specific tools and pricing models today. The full article by Felix Römer is a goldmine of comparisons.
Yes. Check the show notes. We've linked the full article there so you can see the deep dive tool comparisons and all the pricing details we mentioned. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next deep dive.